right, so next up with these 2-4 lessons, we're going to be looking at what are called perfect square equations. So these perfect square equations are things like x squared equals 36, right? We know 36 is a perfect square because we talked about it at the beginning. We also have our nice big list there, which is convenient. So perfect squares equations. The first thing we need to talk about is, first off, detach that keyboard. There we go. So if I'm looking at this equation, x squared is equal to 36. What is the degree of that equation? Ooh, vocab, degree. What does degree mean? You should know this. If you don't know what a degree is, you should study it. A degree is that highest exponent. And clearly in this expression, the highest exponent is 2. So we need to keep in mind that any equation, and this is actually going to be true. We're going to find this out later when we get to unit 9 and unit 10. Any equation with a degree of 2 should have 2 solutions. Kind of crazy. Just going to rewrite those as 2's. So any equation with a degree of 2 should have 2 solutions. And this makes sense because if we look at like a normal equation that we would go solve, let's say 2x plus 4 is equal to 6. If I try to solve something like that, what's the degree of that expression or that equation? Well, that x has an exponent of 1, so the degree is 1, meaning that there's one solution. In most cases, I know that there's infinite and no solutions, but in most cases, it'll line up. So just like that, when I have an equation with a degree of 2, it should have 2 solutions. So x squared equals 36. First off, remember keeping in mind that the goal of equation solving is to isolate that variable. That x is not by itself yet because it still has the exponent of 2 or that squared on it. So what is the undoing of a squared? How do you undo a square? Well, the undoing of a square is a square root. So let's jot that down over here. Square roots, those guys, are the inverse operation to squaring something. Raising something to that second power. So just like if I were to, in a normal equation, if I had something being added, I would do the inverse operation of that and subtract it from both sides. Here, to get rid of this squared, the inverse operation of a square is a square root. So I'm going to square root both sides, leaving you with x equals. And this is where we get a little tricky, because if you plug that in your calculator, you definitely get 6. But we know from what we just learned that any equation with a degree of 2 should have 2 solutions. And right now, we only have 1 solution. So we need to think about what else squared could give us positive 36. What other number could I multiply by itself? The way I'm multiplying 6 times 6 to get 36. What other number could I square or multiply by itself to get positive 36? Normally, this is a really fun conversation we have in class. But remember, a negative times a negative also gives you positive. So our second solution is x equals negative 6. Both of those make that equation true. Hence, those 2 solutions.